The city was shaken by tragic story in 2019 in Lakeville, Indian, which remain in people's memory, to long period of time the story of horny mother eat up her son friend. Jacob Walton, his best friend Michael Jenkins, and Michael's 42-year-old mother Elizabeth Jenkins lived next door to each other. Both friends together studied in a same school. Playing football in same town since childhood, they played on the same football team. Spent time at each other's houses, Elizabeth was always hospitable and caring, often seen helping the boys with their homework or cooking dinner for them. Elizabeth considered Jacob Walton as her son. Everything changed in the Intial summer of Jacob had just graduated from high school and was preparing to enter college. Michael had gone to spend the holidays with his grandmother. Jacob began spending a lot of time at Jenkins' house, helping Elizabeth with gardening and household chores. Gradually, something more than just friendship developed between them. Elizabeth always felt lonely in her marriage. Her husband Tom was often away on business work and trips, and paid little attention to her. In Jacob she found an outlet, someone who admired and listened to her. Elizabeth was a 42-year-old woman with a toned figure and a captivating smile that could charm any man. In Jacob she saw youth energy and a passion for life that she so lacked initially. Their communication was innocent. Elizabeth suggested that Jacob help with the garden, and he readily agreed while working. They talked a lot, sharing dreams and concerns one day after a hard day's work. Elizabeth suggested that Jacob stay for dinner as a thank you for his help. The garden that day, Tom, as often happened, was working the night shift. Elizabeth and Jacob sat together at the table enjoying wine and conversation. Elizabeth felt young, free, and desired. Once again, she began to notice how Jacob looked at her with a gaze full of admiration and tenderness. These looks awakened long-forgotten feelings in her. She decided to take a risk and make the first move one evening when Jacob stayed for dinner. Again, Elizabeth wore a tight-fitting dress that highlighted her figure. She felt confident and attractive for her. It was something of a game. She enjoyed watching how she attracted the young man and how he looked at her with admiration. After dinner, they moved to the living room where they lit candles and played music. Elizabeth invited Jacob to dance. They danced slowly, holding each other close at some point. Elizabeth couldn't resist and gently kissed Jacob. He responded with such passion that all doubts instantly disappeared for him. This was his first experience, and the surge of hormones in the teenager made the situation even more intense from that moment on. Their romance began to develop rapidly. They spent every free moment together, secretly meeting in the woods or abandoned places. Elizabeth savored every moment spent with Jacob. She felt young again, full of life and passion. Her heart beat faster when she saw him, and every touch was like a breath of fresh air. For her, Jacob, too, was fascinated by Elizabeth. He saw her not only as a beautiful woman, but also as someone who understood him better than anyone else in her company. He felt special and important, and while for Elizabeth it was just fun, the infantile Jacob believed that between them they were truly in love for life. As time went on, Jacob began to insist that their relationship become open, which left Elizabeth confused and afraid. Elizabeth began to panic. She understood that if Tom found out about the affair, it would destroy her family and reputation. She tried to end the relationship with Jacob, but he wouldn't back down, threatening to tell Michael and Tom. Everything, Elizabeth was desperate. She saw no other way out. August became a tragic month for Lakeville during this hot summer period. A love story reached its climax. Elizabeth Jenkins, realizing that her secret affair with Jacob Walton could destroy her family and life, decided to take extreme measures. She knew Jacob wouldn't back down, and threatened to tell her husband and son everything. In desperation, she made a decision that would forever change her life. Elizabeth meticulously planned to make the murder look like an accident. She studied the area, selecting a suitable spot in the woods where no one would see them. She also decided to use a method that could easily be attributed to accidental injury for her plan. She chose a Friday evening, knowing that her husband Tom would be on the night shift, and Michael was still at his grandmother's. Elizabeth suggested to Jacob that they meet at their usual spot in the woods. Claiming she wanted to discuss their future and find a compromise, she tried to be as convincing as possible on that fateful evening. Elizabeth wore long pants and a long-sleeve shirt to avoid attracting the attention of passers-by. She arrived at the meeting place early and carefully surveyed the area to ensure no one was around. She brought a bottle of wine with her when Jacob arrived. Elizabeth greeted him with a smile and a hug. They began to talk, and Elizabeth tried not to show her nervousness. She persuaded Jacob to walk deeper into the woods, away from the trail. They reached a cliff, settled in a secluded spot, and she offered Jacob to have a drink with her. According to her plan, she was supposed to push Jacob down to make it look like he fell accidentally due to alcohol intoxication. At some point, she stopped pretending to hear a strange sound and asked Jacob to check if there were any animals nearby. When he turned away, Elizabeth quickly pushed him down in the morning. She herself went to Jacob's house and asked his parents if he would help her in the garden today, but they were bewildered and hadn't seen Jacob since the evening, assuming he was out with friends. Elizabeth and the Waltons called the police. Elizabeth claimed she hadn't seen Jacob and had slept heavily that evening, exhausted after working in the garden. When the police found Jacob's body, they initially considered it an accident. However, a detailed investigation revealed that Jacob's fall couldn't have been accidental. The distance from the fall, his posture, and the injuries indicated that Jacob had been intentionally pushed. Toxicology tests determined what wine Jacob had consumed that evening, and the police launched a thorough investigation, searching every dumpster. Waste disposal services were instructed not to collect garbage for a period while the investigation was ongoing. Eventually, the crucial bottle was found. Elizabeth's fingerprints were discovered on it, and surveillance cameras at the store captured the moment she purchased that exact bottle of wine. Under the pressure of evidence, Elizabeth was arrested and taken in for questioning. Initially, she denied her guilt, claiming no involvement in Jacob's death. However, after extensive interrogation and presentation of evidence, Elizabeth confessed to the murder. She described her fear of exposure and the desperation that consumed her at trial. Elizabeth claimed she acted in self-defense, but investigators and prosecutors established that she had premeditated the crime. She was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. Tom Jenkins was shocked and devastated upon learning the truth about his wife's double life, despite frequent separations due to his work. He had always trusted Elizabeth. Discovering her affair with Jacob and subsequent murder shattered Tom's world. For Michael Jenkins, losing his best friend was a devastating blow, but discovering that his mother was guilty of murder was unbearable. Michael felt betrayed and humiliated, plunged into deep depression. He not only lost a friend, but also his trust in his family. Jacob Walton's family was deeply shaken and devastated. They lost their beloved son, whom they loved and cherished, only to discover that his life was brutally ended by a woman they knew and trusted. The family tried to support each other, but the tragedy left a profound on their hearts and shattered their world. According to the latest information, both families sold their homes and left Lakeville.